Just before we get started with this video, I want to say that it's brought to you by me, or rather another channel I do called Business Plays. I've got more on that in a bit. Founded in 1862, the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania popped up in response to the booming need for coal. Anthracite coal, a type of coal once in high demand for heating homes, lay under the region and its surrounding area in massive quantities. In fact, approximately 95% of all anthracite coal in the United States is thought to be in Pennsylvania. So there you go. So it's no surprise that this town thrived for a century, with over 2,000 residents living in Centralia during its peak. However, when the 1960s rolled around, more and more people were moving away from using coal for heating, reducing the demand for anthracite coal, because coal is absolutely hideous for the environment. As a result, business was dwindling, and the population of the town had shrunk to between 1,100 and 1,200 people. However, as it turns out, it wasn't a reduced need for coal that actually killed this town, but rather it was just a little fire. A little fire that is still burning today, and it's over half a century later. The Centralia mine fire began in the days before Memorial Day in May of 1962. Memorial Day is at the end of May. May the 25th in 2020, there you go. The exact nature of what locals refer to as the incident, in very horror movie-esque style, is debated to this day. The most accepted theory states that Centralia's volunteer fire department intentionally set fire to the town trash dump to decrease the amount of garbage before Memorial Day, since it was located near the town cemetery. It's like the town of Centralia mining coal for burning across the nation, and also just burning its garbage for fun. The volunteer firefighters failed to notice that there was an opening to the mine shaft that just lay hidden beneath the trash, and the fire spread into the coal mine underground. Whatever the case, when the fire was discovered on May the 27th, 1962, the Department of Environment Resources and the Centralia authorities, they tried and failed, as you know, to put it out. This initially was hindered by a lack of funds when the fire was at its smallest and still beatable. Things ultimately got a lot more expensive, however. Over the next 20 years, over $7 million was spent in fire-stopping efforts, doing such things as digging deep trenches to isolate it and flushing the fire by dumping wet sand into the tunnels. Eventually, they just decided to give up because it seemed like the fire wasn't posing any danger to Centralia or the surrounding towns, and the one tangible solution to stopping the fire, which was digging a massive 45-story deep and nearly mile-long trench around where it had spread to, and well, that would have cost over $500 million. At this point, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania closed a handful of mines near the Centralia mine due to dangerous gases traveling through the connected areas and into those other mines, but, well, otherwise everyone just decided to ignore the situation. The residents of Centralia further took the fire in their stride at first. They even initially benefited from the grounds being heated. For instance, their sidewalks and driveways no longer needed shoveling during cold, snowy months. Amazing and slightly terrifying. Others benefited from having warm soil in their gardens and could even harvest certain plants like tomatoes in winter. But in a sign of things to come, a gas station owner discovered in 1979 that the fire had heated his underground fuel tanks to 172 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 78 degrees Celsius. While not anywhere near a critical level, gas vapors do not ignite until around 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and the boiling point isn't until about 410 degrees Fahrenheit. It was nonetheless a sign of just how hot the ground was getting in certain areas. After this, gases and heat from the fire also began to kill vegetation above the ground in certain areas, so I guess they could say goodbye to those wonderful tomatoes. Then, in 1981, a 12-year-old boy by the name of Todd Domboski was cutting through his grandmother's backyard when the ground suddenly opened up beneath his feet, revealing a fiery pit below. Domboski managed to stop his slide into the sinkhole of death by grabbing onto a tree root and shouting for help. Had his cousin not been nearby to quickly pull him out, Todd would likely have died from inhaling the carbon monoxide-filled smoke that was billowing around him from the burning sinkhole. missing coal. The near miss of boy being swallowed by the fires of hell made headlines across the United States and spurred the government into action, with Congress earmarking $42 million for the purpose of buying out and relocating all of Centralia's citizens. While most Centralians eventually chose to take the money and leave town for a place that wasn't right above hell, a handful of residents refused to leave their homes. Nevertheless, Pennsylvania's government declared eminent domain in 1992, meaning that the government could seize private property so long as they compensated the property owners. Still, some people just refused to leave. The residents who remained in town subsequently underwent a lengthy court battle with the state in order to keep their homes. They argued that the government's buyout originated from an underhanded plan to gain valuable mineral rights. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania argued that this has never been their intention and that the buyout does not impact mineral rights. Those people seem totally crazy. Ultimately, the remaining residents were allowed to stay but had to agree to hand over the land to the government after their deaths. I mean, it's not like there's going to be a ton of demand for land located directly above hell. The town of Centralia is now virtually a ghost town with only 5 remaining crazy people, also known as residents, as of the last report that we could find from a couple of years ago. The properties that the state either purchased or seized have been leveled and the vegetation has been allowed to run rampant. Still burning today, the underground fire has shown no signs of slowing down. Some estimates claim that there is enough coal under Centralia to fuel the fire for another 250 years or so. Needless to say, the town will not be rebuilt anytime soon, though the handful of remaining locals do note it has become something of a tourist attraction, with a few thousand people paying a visit every year. Incidentally, while a half-century-old underground coal fire might sound like it must be some sort of record, the oldest known underground coal fire is actually thought to be Australia's Burning Mountain, which has been smouldering for an estimated 6,000 years. And talking about blazes, let me tell you about my new channel, Business Blaze. It's a channel filled with facts and knowledge, but it's in a much more laid-back format. It's about business, but I've tried to make it interesting. It looks at the most epic failures and times things went wrong, but also little-known successes, because we don't want to be all negative on the internet. Generally, it's just the weirdest stuff that I could find from the business world, like the biggest giveaway failures in business history, what went wrong with the Fire Festival, it was a total train wreck, that's what, or just epic blazes where I'll knock out 30 wild business facts. But don't be put off if you're not into business stuff. Most people in the comments describe it as hardly being about business at all, so well, I'm not really sure if that's a selling point, but check it out below. Anyway, like I say, it's a bit more laid back than this, but throws a good amount of facts at you as well. Like I say, there's a link below, go check it out, and now for some bonus facts. Speaking of practically uncontrollable fires, bale fires and their propensity to start if the stacked hay is just a bit too wet. So how does this work? It doesn't make any sense. Why would wet hay burn? Bacteria thrive when a sufficient glucose source is available. In the process of breaking it down into energy, aerobic bacteria catabolize the glucose, turning it into a usable form. Through the process of respiration, these bacteria completely oxidize the glucose, transforming it into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. This last bit is primarily released as heat. Likewise, even after it's cut, the cells in the hay plant itself are still active, still respiring, and in a similar process to the bacteria, they're converting glucose into CO2, H2O, and energy, which is also released as heat. The presence of both heat-generating processes can be innocuous as long as the hay is properly stored with an appropriate moisture concentration. According to both the University of Minnesota Extension and the Washington State University Extension, the ideal moisture content for baling and storing is 15% moisture or less. So, when you're baling all of your hay, well, now you know. However, once the moisture content increases to over the 15% threshold, mesophilic, warm-loving bacteria begin to thrive as sufficient water is now present for them to dissolve and absorb nutrients. Needing only to split in two to reproduce, that's binary fission by the way, in optimal conditions, the population of a community of bacteria can double in about 10 minutes. And as each hungry little cell consumes a little bit of the glucose, which is fires everywhere around them, the amount of heat generated can increase rapidly. Eventually, the moisture that allowed for the explosive microbial growth that created the excess heat begins to disappear as the increasing population uses it up, all the while releasing heat and increasing the internal temperature of the stack. You can probably see where this is going. At this point, a new type of bacteria, exothermic or heat-resistant, also throw their single cellular selves into the action and start their own little reaction that continues to spike the heat until spontaneous combustion occurs. Often extremely difficult and expensive to put out, in many cases, the sometimes massive fires are just allowed to burn themselves out. Maybe in 250 years. For example, in September 2013, a fire in Yolo County. There's a place called Yolo County? YOLO! It's in California. It became a massive inferno that could be seen for miles. I want to live in YOLO. Containment was deemed the only practical solution, with ultimately 10 acres of hay, along with other structures and equipment, allowed to burn to the ground. The total damage was estimated at $6 million. So, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that thumbs up button below. Also, go over and check out Business Plays, where I often encourage you to smash the dislike button, because there's a bit of a meme on that channel. It's linked to below, and thank you for watching.